Hello again, Mavericks, and welcome out to another market roundup. This is Ankit here, and let's begin a market coverage. It's a Monday, April the 18th. Hope everyone had a good long weekend last week. It was a holiday shortened week, so time to get back into the routine and do our daily process of looking at markets, see where things are moving, and how we need to change our outlook as we discussed in the currency room. So let's do a quick market analysis and see how the markets reacted today. And as we can see, it was a bit of a back and forth. So market flip-flopped again. We are continuing to see the markets being in this pull and tug formation where we have seen days or times when market wants to rally and it just totally fails. And then on the other hand, we've seen markets that looks very bearish and suddenly has a nice bounce back up. So this is again a price action that we usually see around range bound price action. Not really seeing clarity, and we have to be very cautious around this kind of market environment as we are seeing this bit of a flip-flop price action. So as you can we can see S&P was actually up slightly. We are seeing a little bit more gains after the close, but the world markets were actually underperforming. Crypto surprisingly did really well today. It was not a good technical setup as we went into last week, but we actually started to see a nice price action starting off this week. Gold was slightly up and oil was down bit 0.5%. So percentage wise, it was not really a big day today, but where the movement was, where the price action was in intraday as we flip-flop back and forth. So as you see, we can see the S&P chart. We are not in a clear formation here. We talk about how this was in a downward trend, and that we actually started with this little uptrend here. And where we are right now, it's unclear where the market wants to go. We are kind of wedged in between this moving averages there. So this is when the moving averages start to flatline a little bit like this. This is again an indication for a bit of a range for price action. So at this point, it could actually get a little bit more worse if you start to break down lower. But again, looking at the price action today, we didn't really close as bearish today. So this is where we'll probably see a little bit better price action overnight and tomorrow. Compared to last night, as futures were down more than 0.5%. So bit of a challenge here to kind of figure out where the market wants to go. Where we should take a look at the world markets seeing the exact same thing. So the moving averages are flatlined, and at this point we can clearly just draw the lines and say, well, this is the range that we're dealing with. And we could potentially see similar to what we saw last week, where we started off weaker, then we actually got some pretty big rallies in between, but then eventually we just didn't go anywhere. We are seeing a little bit more of a similar price action in the crypto markets as well, but I want to pay attention to the trend overall. You know, as we talk about the equity markets, we were actually below the moving averages. We were in a downtrend, and then that turned into a higher high, turned into a bit of an uptrend, and then fell back again. This thing actually has been mostly sideways for the most part in the past 2 to 3 months. We did break higher over here, so we broke above that range, and then we are back into the range. So at this point, moving averages are not really telling you anything because they're flatlined. So we have a resistance level and we have a support level. In a range bound price action, we're likely to stay and bounce in between those two. So if this price action needs to turn above or below those levels, that's where we start to see a bit of a pickup in direction. But until then, treat it as a range for price action instead of directional movements. Taking a look at our outlook, it remains slightly bearish. And like I said, this is the kind of price action where you have to be a lot more careful as we are unclear. And it's hard to commit to a bit of a direction. Either it wants to go higher, wants to go lower. I think at this point, it likely to kind of make it difficult for both sides. Now, looking at the schedule, this week is not as busy of a week as you compared to last week. Last week we had a lot of central banks. We had more news events. This week we're taking a bit of a back burner on these news events, and the only important events that we have is really on a Wednesday, CPI out of Canada and New Zealand. And as you can see, they both raised rates last week. Don't really think that this news event will really provide a big catalyst for it. I think that's already behind us. So not really expecting a whole lot of volatility around the news events, but let's dive into and take a look at and do a quick currency analysis and see how things are moving both in the cryptocurrency world and the foreign currency world. So let's just start with the cryptocurrency. As you can see that Bitcoin started off with a much better day, 2.73%. Surprisingly, Ethereum, which actually at a certain point looked better than Bitcoin, is actually underperforming here. So that was actually the worst performer today. Litecoin, Solana, Cardano, they both were around the same 1.5%. But I think at this point, if we have to take a look at what outperform versus underperform, then Bitcoin kind of takes the lead in that direction. Now, looking in the currency world, you can see it was a bit of a mix. One of the things that we did notice, we talk about it in the currency room, is the U.S. dollar. Is the U.S. dollar likely to break and continue moving higher? And it looks like we got that breakout today, which means we are actually breaking out of that basket. We're breaking out of that range that we've been in the past few months. So something to pay attention to. And notice that as the dollar outperforms, it actually does put some pressure on growth currencies like the Aussie and Kiwi. So the entire month of February and March, the dollar was not really the big mover. Again, the yen was a big mover. So we actually see Aussie and Kiwi did really well around those times. But as the dollar is picking up, it's putting some pressure on the Aussie and Kiwi. And then here we are, as you can see, the CAD actually did really well today as well. So the dollar and CAD's leading the chart. And outside of that, pound was really in this high base formation, so didn't really had any big change. Euro and Swiss francs slight positive. As you can see, surprisingly, yen was actually still weaker, but not as weak percentage-wise. So there is some good movements over today. Was really in pairs like dollar yen, or even pairs like the CAD yen. But outside of that, wasn't really a big percentage move across the board. So when we take a look at velocities, so we have our trend scores, we know where things are, but let's take a look at what's really moving. So dollar continues to move, CAD continues to move, so something we need to pay attention to. Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash is also outperforming here in the crypto world. So these four currencies seems like are on a move. On the negative side, we have the Kiwi and the Aussie that continues to underperform. So something we need to pay attention to. Outside of that, pound again making a nice little trend changing move last week, but so far velocity is still a bit of on the zero. If the velocity start to pick up, I really like pound on a further gains, but until then we'll have to wait and see. Again, velocity score is just telling you, is the trade ready to move yet? Is it moving or not? And clearly it's not really moving at this point. Euro and Swiss franc, they're more on the same story here, but we like the pound more to the upside. So we'll have to see next 24 hours, see which way we actually see some sort of movement or breakout. So let's talk about possible trades, and this is where we'll dive right into trading view and then take a look at some technical setups and see where we can find opportunities. So one thing we did cover in the currency room was taking advantage of relative strength and weakness at this point. And I did point it out, currency pairs like Kiwi CAD and Aussie CAD, and let's see how well or how did they do so far. As you can see that on a daily chart, they actually start to move lower. So there was a clear divergence or clear relative strength in the Kiwi and the Aussie in the past 2 to 3 months. You can see that it's actually start to roll over a little bit here. We still like CAD as a trend score. We still like CAD to the upside. So I think Kiwi CAD and Aussie CAD seems to be working very nicely here. So at this point, looking at, let's take a look at the 4-hour chart. You can see that they're moving very consistently to the downside. And again, these are the currency pairs not as prone to volatility, especially when we get some volatility from the risk trends. So I think this is a good play, relative strength and weakness wise. And on a daily chart, both I think the Aussie CAD seems to be ready to actually move lower here. So the first target is really at about 91.50, but if it breaks that 91.50 area, I think it can easily get down towards that 90 area. Same thing with the Kiwi CAD, is getting down to that point, breaking below, and right now I think we'll probably see continued weakness there. Outside of that, actually, let's talk about dollar, because dollar is the one that we had talked about. We were not as clear if the dollar is ready to break out, because Friday was a day where we just closed, or Thursday actually, we closed right at the resistance point. So first couple of days, we actually are moving higher. And if you look at the range, we actually bounced off that range a couple of times. So this was the third time, third test. And here we are getting a confirmed breakout. So is the dollar ready to make a run? This is a weekly chart. You can see dollar has been kind of in this little upward trend, but then it goes sideways for long periods of time. It seems like the dollar is about to, or actually it's in a moving environment. So I think the dollar likely will outperform. And in that case, we can take a look at pairs like Aussie USD. And you can see on a 4-hour chart, they are actually moving consistently lower. So lower high with a lower low. So I actually still like these setups. And again, we're just playing what's moving and what's showing relative strength versus what's showing relative weakness. The best pair that we actually have seen so far is the dollar yen. And again, that remains a good setup. So far, I know if you look at the daily chart, you can say it looks extended. But remember, this is where the velocity is. And look at the candlestick today. We closed at the highs of the day, and it seems like market likes to continue higher on the dollar yen. And this has cleared some key resistance level, as you can see, going back to 2015. So this thing has a lot more legs behind it. I mean, if I really zoom out, I mean this level was quite important going back to 2016, then going back to 2006. So at this point, I mean, the only high that I can see was 135 going back in February 2002. So it seems like there's definitely more upside there. So dollar yen remains on that upside watch list. Outside of that, let's talk about pound, which is again another potential setup. Looking at the price action 4-hour chart, we actually in this nice little high basing pattern here. So since the pound is doing well here, we can continue to take a look at pound against the yen. Beautiful setup here, making a high base, breaking above this 165.50. I think it can actually have a bit of a rally to the upside. So daily chart, all charts will kind of line up, and price action remains pretty strong. We can also take a look at if we want to play that relative strength and weakness. We can still continue to play pound Aussie and pound Kiwi. You can see that this thing is starting to move up a little bit here, and pound Kiwi. Very similar pattern. So I do like further upside on these two as well. And again, it's all about what's moving. So taking a look at velocity, we want to continue targeting those areas. So these are the setups that we're currently seeing in the markets. And again, let's take a look at the equity markets. And I just wanted to show you how the price action kind of moved today. And again, this was the price action today. We started off much weaker overnight, and here we are, got a rally in the morning. We actually dipped to the lows midday and got a big rally here, back to the resistance, sold off again, and here we are, rally towards the end of the day. So this is a very difficult price action to follow, especially if you're looking for some directions to take place. So until the market does this, continue to trade the markets that's in front of you. 4-hour chart. Market had a nice little candlestick today. So again, this candlestick today was a quite interesting candle. Again, this is more bullish than bearish. So I would expect markets to maybe try to make a run overnight and tomorrow. So I'm looking for more risk trends to take place. But remember, right now, we are not really seeing currency markets being that much in sync with these risk trends. So to continue to follow the market price action, the relative strength and weakness, I think we'll continue to see some of those movements take place in the next 24 to 48 hours. That's all for now. And again, this week as we're starting off, we'll probably see a better clarity as we move on. So keep a close eye on all the other areas and see where we can get the right clues. So market direction again remains unclear. US dollar likely to extend gains, and Aussie Kiwi is where we're looking for some weakness. Till then, take care. Have a great evening. We'll see you guys in the next update. Cheers.